Propositional meaning. Propositional meaning is the type of meaning that comes from the context within which the sentence is used. So we have a declarative sentence or a statement sentence. So it is only that meaning which has some truth in it is the propositional meaning. Another distinction that is made is called linguistic meaning. So we can say that a sentence may have two meanings, a linguistic meaning and a propositional meaning. What's the difference between the two is important to know. Linguistic meaning is said to be different from a proposition and does not carry truth value. It means that propositional meaning carries truth values. We can determine whether the statement is false or true. But when we are talking about a linguistic meaning or linguistic meaning of a sentence, we are not sure or we are not making a claim that this statement is either true or false. So let's take an example. Mary loves Carl. So in this sentence, this is a sentence, right? It can be a propositional or a linguistic meaning. So if we translate the same sentence into Spanish, Mary ama Carl. In this sentence, we have simply turned the sentence from one language to another language into Spanish, right? So there is no propositional meaning into it. It is simply a linguistic meaning. So it is devoid of any context, right? So without any context, without any situation, we cannot determine whether the statement is true or false. So this type of meaning, when translated from one language to another language without any reference to the context, is linguistic meaning. The linguistic meaning of a declarative sentence is distinction from the proposition expressed by the sentence on some occasion of the sentence's use. So the propositional sentence is used in a certain context. That is very important, and that differentiate the propositional sentence or meaning from the linguistic meaning. Propositions are statements about the words which can be true or false. So whenever we make statements about anything, they have to be either true or false. So they determine that they are propositional meaning. They carry propositional meaning. They form the basis of human reasoning and determine our views and action. So we take action or we form views on the basis of the propositional meanings of the sentence. They are very important because they determine whether we are to take any action regarding that statement or not, or form any opinion regarding that statement or not. So in linguistic behavior, propositions emerge in complete sentences or clauses. So this is to be remembered that proposition has to be a complete sentence or a complete clause. We cannot take, for example, a single word like jeep and say that it has some proposition. No, we have to make a sentence that takes this word into it, and then we have to decide whether it's false or it's true. The statement is either false or true. So it is the full sentence in a context that forms a proposition. A jeep crashed into a barrier, establish a topic subject, a jeep, and makes a conceptually verifiable statement about it. So we can determine whether it's true or it's false. So Sarah realizes that a jeep crashed into a barrier. So this is again one proposition. Sarah thinks that a jeep crashed into a barrier. Here we have two verbs that actually have that are in the superordinate or the main clause, and then we have two embedded sentences in each of these two main clauses. Each of these sentences contain an embedded clause. Sarah realizes that a jeep crashed into a barrier. So the embedded content is dependent on the verb in the superordinate clause. So what is said in the dependent clause is dependent on the verb of the superordinate subordinate clause mean the main clause. So it will determine whether it is to be a proposition or not. Mental state verbs, there are different types of verbs. Mental state, some verbs refers to our mental activity or mental state. Verbs can be categorized as factive, like realize, regret, and know, or non-factive, like believe, think, and assume, right? So for a factive sentence such as Sarah realizes that a jeep crashed into a barrier to be true, the jeep must have crashed into it. With this factive verb, we must be able to know that actually the action took place or it did not take place. So for non-factive sentence, Sarah thinks that a jeep crashed into the barrier to be true. There is no such case. It does not actually matter whether the accident took place. Only it's Sarah's representation of the word is important. In this sentence, Sarah actually giving her opinion about a certain action. So propositional meaning is the type of meaning that comes from the context within which the sentence is used. So we are talking about some topic, and in that discussion we make certain statements. They are relevant to each other, right? They are either true or either they are false. So this is very important. So such statements are based on propositional aspect, and they are propositional statements. They can be either true or false, and they are always said in a certain context. Whereas linguistic statements, linguistic sentence, they are independent of context, as we just saw that one sentence, we take one sentence and simply translate it into another without making any reference to any context. So propositional meaning is context bound, and linguistic meaning is context free or independent of any context.